The convoy of black SUVs tore through the coastal fog like predators hunting prey. Inside the lead vehicle, a Royal Protection officer gripped his radio, voice tight with urgency. Target spotted. Moving to intercept. On the cliffside ahead, Duke Adrian Vale stood motionless beside a woman the world had been screaming about for 72 hours. Alara Quinn, the journalist they were calling a seductress, a radical, a threat to the crown itself. Cameras clicked from the tree line. Helicopter blades beat overhead. Adrian didn't flinch. He simply took her hand, turned his back on the approaching vehicles, and walked toward the edge. The officer's voice cracked through the static. He's not stopping. Repeat, he's not stopping. If you want to know how a duke becomes a fugitive and a journalist becomes the most hunted woman in the country, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The first photograph surfaced at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Adrian Vale, His Grace, the Duke of Kenmont, third in line to nothing that mattered anymore, but still carrying a title that weighed like iron chains, had been missing for 6 days. No statement, no leaked memo from the palace. Just gone. Vanished from a charity gala in London where he'd been scheduled to give remarks on something forgettable, probably literacy or youth empowerment, the kind of scripted cause that made him feel like a puppet with a sash. The photo was grainy, shot from across a harbor on a telephoto lens that turned the evening light into soup, but there was no mistaking him. Same sharp jawline the tabloids loved, same dark hair that never looked combed even when it was, same way of standing, shoulders back, hands in pockets, like he was waiting for someone to dare him to care. He was standing outside a fish and chips shop in a town called Marrow's End, population maybe 3,000 if you counted the gulls. And he wasn't alone. The woman beside him wore a canvas jacket too big for her frame, jeans with a hole in one knee, and boots that had seen some miles. Her hair was pulled into a careless knot, dark with a few strands catching the wind. She wasn't looking at the camera because she didn't know it was there yet. She was looking at Adrian, saying something that made him laugh, not the polite chuckle he gave to dignitaries, but a real laugh, the kind that bent him forward slightly. The caption underneath, posted by an anonymous account that would be deleted by morning, read, "Breaking. Duke Adrian spotted with unknown woman. Who is she?" By dawn, the question had detonated across every platform, every feed, every breakfast table in the country. In a cramped office in central London, Simon Carr sat in front of 4 monitors, each one streaming a different news channel. He was 52, balding in a way he'd stopped fighting, and had worked in crisis management for the palace for 19 years. He'd handled affairs, health scares, leaked documents, DUIs, and one memorable incident involving a minor royal and a llama at a private party in Ibiza. He had never handled this. His phone was ringing off the hook. Texts poured in faster than he could read them. The palace press secretary had already called twice, her voice climbing into a register usually reserved for actual emergencies. The Prime Minister's office wanted a briefing, and the Queen's private secretary, a man who once made Simon cry during a performance review, had sent a single message, "Fix it." Simon gulped cold coffee and stared at the photo again. "Who the hell are you?" he muttered at the woman on the screen. One of his junior staffers, a sharp-eyed woman named Priya, leaned over his shoulder. "We ran facial recognition, nothing in the royal database, no matches in society registries. Expand the search. Already did. Checked university records, charity boards, even LinkedIn." Simon's stomach tightened. "And?" Priya hesitated. "We got a hit, but you're not going to like it." She pulled up a file on the side monitor, a profile page archived from 3 years ago. The same face, but in this photo she was younger, sharper, standing in front of a government building holding a press badge. Alara Quinn, investigative journalist. Simon's blood went cold. What did she investigate? Priya scrolled. Financial corruption, arms deals, money laundering through offshore accounts tied to... She stopped. Tied to what, Priya? Tied to members of parliament, 2 cabinet ministers. And she clicked again. A private equity firm that has the Duke of Marlborough on its advisory board. Simon closed his eyes. The Duke of Marlborough was Adrian's uncle, a man with enough influence to bury stories, destroy careers, and make problems disappear. She went after Marlborough? Indirectly. The firm he's tied to was implicated in a weapons deal to a regime under sanctions. Quinn was the one who broke it. The story ran for about 36 hours before it got pulled. Legal threats, pressure from above. She lost her job, went dark after that. Simon opened his eyes. And now she's with Adrian. Now she's with Adrian. He reached for his phone. This wasn't a scandal. This was a ticking bomb. 200 miles north, in Marrow's End, Alara Quinn stood on the deck of a rented cottage and watched the tide come in. The sea was gray and restless, folding over itself in messy lines. The wind smelled like salt and diesel from the fishing boats moored in the harbor below. She heard the door open behind her. Footsteps. Then Adrian's voice, quieter than usual. They found us. She didn't turn. I know. How long have you known? Since yesterday. Saw a guy with a camera in the bookshop. Thought maybe I was paranoid. She finally looked at him. I wasn't. Adrian stepped beside her, hands in the pockets of his jacket. He looked tired. Not the performative tired he used to fake at state dinners, but genuinely worn like he hadn't slept well in days. I didn't think it would happen this fast. You walked away from the most famous family in the country. What did you think would happen? I thought I'd have more time. Time for what? He didn't answer right away. The wind pushed his hair into his eyes, and he shoved it back impatiently, to figure out how to tell the truth without getting you killed. Alara's jaw tightened. I've been in worse situations. Not with me in them. Adrian, they're not going to go after me, he said, his voice suddenly harder. I'm royal. Untouchable, remember? But you? They'll tear you apart. They'll dig up everything, every story you wrote, every source you protected, every mistake you ever made. They'll twist it until you're the villain. I've been the villain before. Not like this. She turned to face him fully now. Her eyes were dark, sharp, the kind that missed nothing. Then why did you come here? Why leave everything if you knew this would happen? Adrian met her gaze. For a moment he looked like he might say something reckless, something that would break whatever fragile boundary they'd been dancing around for weeks. Instead, he just exhaled slowly. Because staying was worse. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his expression went flat. It's Simon. Your handler? Something like that. He answered, listened. His face didn't change, but Alara saw his knuckles go white around the phone. I'm not coming back, Adrian said, his voice even. Simon's voice was loud enough that Alara could hear it, tinny and frantic. Your Grace, with all due respect, you don't have a choice. I'm not coming back, Adrian repeated, slower this time. And if you send anyone else to find me, I'll make a statement, a real one. Not the polished bullshit you people write for me. Adrian, please, tell them I'm fine. Tell them I'm safe. And tell them to stop looking. He hung up. Alara raised an eyebrow. That's not going to work. I know. They'll send someone. I know that too. So what do we do? Adrian looked out at the water. The horizon was a flat line between gray and gray. We stay, and when they come, we tell them the truth. Which is? He glanced at her. That I didn't run away. I just stopped pretending. The media storm hit in waves. By midday, every outlet had the story. Tabloids ran with the most lurid angles. Duke's secret lover. Mystery woman exposed. The broadsheets tried for restraint but failed. Royal vanishes with unknown woman. Palace in crisis. Social media went nuclear. Theories sprouted like weeds. She was a foreign agent, a gold digger, a cult member, an escort. Someone dug up an old photo of Alara at a protest and claimed she was an anarchist. Someone else insisted she'd been married before and abandoned her children. None of it was true. All of it spread anyway. Alara stopped reading after the first hour. Adrian lasted 3. They're saying you brainwashed me, he said, staring at his laptop screen. Classic. They're calling you dangerous. Also classic. There's a petition to have you arrested. Alara looked up from the book she wasn't really reading. For what? Kidnapping. She snorted. You're 34 years old. Apparently I'm a victim. Of what? My devastating charm? Despite everything, Adrian smiled. It was brief, but it was there. Something like that. She set the book down. This is going to get worse. I know. They're going to come after everything I've ever done, every source I've ever protected, every story I killed to keep someone safe. I know. And they're going to come after you, too. Your family won't let this go. You're an embarrassment now, a liability. Adrian leaned back in his chair, eyes on the ceiling. I've been a liability for years. They just hid it better. Why did you really leave, Adrian? He was quiet for a long time, long enough that Alara thought he might not answer. Then he sat forward, elbows on his knees, and looked at her with something raw in his expression. You remember that story you wrote? The one about the arms deal? Of course. You were right. About all of it. The firm, the offshore accounts, the kickbacks. You were right, and they buried it because the people involved had too much power. He paused. My uncle was one of them. Alara went very still. You knew? I found out later. After your story got pulled, I started asking questions, quietly, and the more I dug, the worse it got. It wasn't just him. There were others, people I'd known my whole life, people I was supposed to trust. What did you find? Adrian's jaw worked. Enough to know that if I stayed, I'd either become part of it or spend my life covering it up. And I couldn't. His voice cracked slightly. I couldn't do that. Alara's chest tightened. She'd spent years chasing stories like this, burning bridges, losing jobs, watching people she cared about walk away because the truth was too heavy. She'd never expected to meet someone who chose the truth over everything else, especially not a duke. So you left, she said quietly. So I left. And you came here. I came here. Why here? Why this town? Adrian looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something unguarded in his face. Because you were here. The words hung in the air between them, dangerous and undeniable. Before either of them could say anything else, a sharp knock rattled the front door. They both froze. You expecting someone? Adrian asked. No. Another knock, harder this time. Alara stood, crossed the room, and opened the door just enough to see out. A man stood on the porch, mid-40s, expensive suit, slightly wrinkled, the look of someone who'd driven fast and angry to get here. He had the kind of face that belonged on a political campaign poster. Handsome, confident, forgettable. Alara Quinn? He said. Depends who's asking. The man held up a badge. Detective Inspector Miles Hargrave, I need to ask you some questions. Alara's pulse kicked up. About? About your relationship with Duke Adrian Vale, and about a series of financial irregularities tied to your former employer. Behind her, Adrian stepped into view. She doesn't have to answer anything. Hargrave's eyes flicked to him, and something cold passed through his expression. Your Grace, good to see you're safe. The palace has been worried. I'm sure they have. I'll need to speak with both of you, separately, if possible. No, Adrian said flatly. I'm afraid this isn't optional. Then arrest me. Otherwise, get off the property. Hargrave's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm not here to arrest anyone. Yet. I'm here to help. There are people very interested in Miss Quinn's activities. People who would prefer this situation be resolved quietly. What people? Alara asked. The kind you've made enemies of. Adrian stepped forward, putting himself slightly between Hargrave and Alara. If you're here to threaten her, you can leave now. I'm here to offer a deal, Hargrave said. You return to London. Miss Quinn cooperates with an inquiry into her journalistic sources and methods. Everyone walks away clean. And if we don't? Hargrave's expression hardened. Then this gets very ugly, very fast, for both of you. Alara felt Adrian tense beside her. She put a hand on his arm, a silent signal. Let me handle this. We're not interested, she said evenly, and unless you have a warrant, you can go. Hargrave studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded newspaper. He handed it to her. You might want to read that, front page, morning edition. He turned and walked back to his car without another word. Alara unfolded the paper. The headline hit like a fist. Journalists linked to Duke investigated for blackmail and conspiracy. Beneath it, her photo. Old from her press badge days, but still unmistakably her. And beside it, a photo of Adrian. Not the one from the fish and chips shop. This one was older, formal, taken at some state event. The subheadline read, Palace sources claim Quinn targeted Vale as part of scheme to expose royal family. Alara's hand started to shake, not from fear, from rage. They're lying, Adrian said immediately. Every word of that is a lie. I know. We'll get a lawyer. We'll sue them into the ground. Adrian. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were burning. They don't care if it's true. They just need people to believe it long enough. Long enough for what? She looked at him. Long enough to bury us both. By nightfall, the story had metastasized. Every outlet picked it up. The narrative was perfect. A cunning journalist seduces a vulnerable duke, manipulates him into running away, all to get revenge for her ruined career. The palace hadn't confirmed it, but they hadn't denied it either. That silence was its own kind of endorsement. Alara's phone was dead. She'd turned it off hours ago, but not before seeing the flood of messages, some from old colleagues asking if it was true, others from strangers telling her she deserved worse than prison. Adrian paced the cottage like a caged animal. He'd tried calling Simon 3 times. No answer. He'd tried his sister. Nothing. Even his oldest friend, a viscount he'd known since boarding school, had gone silent. They've shut me out, he said finally, staring at his phone. Completely. Alara sat on the couch, arms wrapped around her knees. She looked smaller than usual, though her expression hadn't softened. That's how it works. You're a problem now. Problems get isolated. I'm not the problem. They are. Doesn't matter. You broke the rules. You left. You chose someone they didn't approve. That's unforgivable. Adrian stopped pacing and looked at her. Do you regret it? Regret what? This. Me. All of it. Alara didn't answer right away. She stared at the fireplace, where a weak flame struggled against the draft. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than he'd ever heard it. I regret that you got dragged into this. I regret that they're using me to hurt you. But do I regret meeting you? She looked up. No. Adrian crossed the room and sat beside her, not touching, but close. I'm not letting them destroy you. You might not have a choice. Then we'll go down fighting. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You really are a terrible duke. I know. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. The sea was louder now, crashing against the rocks below with a rhythm that felt almost angry. Finally, Alara spoke again. There's something I need to tell you. Adrian turned to her. The story I wrote, the one that got killed. I didn't stop digging after they fired me. What do you mean? I mean I kept investigating, quietly, off the books. I found more, a lot more. More about my uncle? About him? About the firm? About a whole network of people using shell companies and fake charities to move money, weapons, influence. She paused. I have files, documents, bank records, emails, enough to blow the whole thing open. Adrian stared at her. You've been sitting on this for 3 years? I was waiting for the right time, the right platform, someone I could trust to help me release it without getting killed. And now? Alara looked at him. Now they know I have it. That's why they're coming after me, not because of you, because of what I know. Adrian's mind raced. Where are the files? Safe, for now. How safe? Safe enough. But if they find them, this is over. They'll destroy everything and we'll have nothing. Then we need to move first. How? Adrian stood, adrenaline cutting through the exhaustion. We go public, all of it, everything you have. We release it before they can stop us. Adrian, that's insane. They'll come after you. Your family. My family is already after me, he said, his voice hard. And I'm done protecting people who don't deserve it. Alara stood too, facing him. If we do this, there's no going back. You'll lose everything. Your title, your inheritance, your name. I already lost those things the day I walked away. You'll be a traitor. To who? People who've been lying my whole life? To the crown. Adrian's expression didn't waver. Then I'll be a traitor. Alara searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. She found none. You're sure? She asked. I've never been more sure of anything. She nodded slowly. Okay, then we do it. But we do it smart. We need a platform. Someone with reach who can't be intimidated. I know someone, Adrian said. A journalist, independent, runs her own outlet. She hates the palace. Will she help? If I ask, yes. Then call her. Adrian pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, and hit dial. It rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered, brisk and suspicious. This is Claire. Claire, it's Adrian. A long pause. You've got some nerve calling me. I know. I need your help. I'm not running a puff piece about how misunderstood you are. That's not what I'm asking. Then what? Adrian glanced at Alara. I'm asking you to help me take down some very powerful people, and I'm asking you to do it in a way that can't be stopped. Another pause. Longer this time. I'm listening, Claire said, tugged. By the time the call ended, they had a plan. Loose, dangerous, but a plan. Claire would run the story. She had the reach, the credibility, and most importantly, the guts. But she needed the files, all of them. And she needed them verified, cross-referenced, airtight. That meant Alara had to retrieve everything she'd hidden and get it to Claire without being intercepted. I'll go, Alara said, first thing tomorrow. Where are they? Safe deposit box. Newcastle. About 2 hours from here. I'm coming with you. No, you're too visible. If we're seen together, if you're seen alone, they'll grab you. At least with me there, they'll think twice. Alara wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Fine, but we leave early, before sunrise. Agreed. They spent the rest of the night preparing, packing light, planning routes, going over every detail until Alara's head throbbed. Adrian made coffee at midnight, strong and bitter, and they drank it standing in the kitchen, neither of them willing to sit still. At some point, exhaustion caught up with her. Alara leaned against the counter, eyes closed, and felt the weight of the last 72 hours crash down. You should sleep, Adrian said quietly. So should you. I'm too wired. Same. He smiled faintly. Then I guess we're both terrible at self-care. She opened her eyes and looked at him. Really looked. He was disheveled, unshaven, wearing the same sweater he'd had on for 2 days. He looked nothing like the polished duke the world knew. He looked real. Thank you, she said. For what? For believing me. For not running when this got hard. You make it sound like I had a choice. You did. You always do. Adrian's expression softened. No, I really didn't. Before she could ask what he meant, his phone buzzed on the counter. He picked it up, frowned, and turned the screen toward her. It was a message from an unknown number. You have 24 hours to turn over the files. After that, we stop being polite. Alara's stomach dropped. How did they get your number? I don't know. Who is this? I don't know. Her hands clenched into fists. They're watching us. Then we leave tonight. Adrian, tonight, he repeated, before they have time to set up. Alara's mind raced. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was also their only shot. Okay, she said. Let's go. They left at 2 a.m., slipping out the back of the cottage and down a narrow path that led to the harbor. Adrian's car was parked behind a boathouse, hidden from the main road. They moved quickly, quietly, every sound amplified in the cold silence. The drive to Newcastle was tense. Adrian kept checking the rearview mirror. Alara kept her eyes on the road ahead, watching for headlights, for anything that looked wrong. They reached the bank just after 4 a.m., parked 2 blocks away, and walked the rest. The streets were empty, slick with rain. The city felt like a ghost town. Inside the bank, Alara signed in under a false name she'd set up years ago. The clerk barely looked at her. She retrieved the box, carried it to a private room, and opened it. Inside, 3 USB drives, a stack of printed documents, and a burner phone. This is it? Adrian asked. This is everything. He picked up one of the drives. And you're sure it's solid? I spent 3 years building this case. It's solid. Then let's go. They were halfway to the door when Alara's instinct screamed at her to stop. She grabbed Adrian's arm. Wait! What? Something's wrong. Before he could respond, the bank's front door opened. 2 men stepped inside. Suits, earpieces, not cops, not quite. Alara's blood turned to ice. Back door! Now! They ran. The back corridor of the bank smelled like bleach and old carpet. Adrian's shoulder hit the wall as they rounded a corner too fast, Alara half a step ahead, with the metal box clutched against her chest. Behind them, footsteps echoed, measured, unhurried. The kind of pursuit that didn't need to rush because it knew all the exits. There, Alara hissed, pointing at a fire door with a rusted push bar. Adrian slammed into it. The alarm shrieked, piercing, industrial, the kind designed to wake the dead. They burst into an alley that reeked of garbage and rain-soaked cardboard. The sky was still dark, that pre-dawn gray that made everything look like a bad photocopy. Car's 2 blocks east, Adrian said, already running. They hit the main street just as headlights swept across the intersection. A black sedan, moving too slow, too deliberate. Alara grabbed Adrian's jacket and yanked him into a recessed doorway. They pressed against the brick, breathing hard, as the sedan crawled past. "They're boxing us in," she whispered. "How many?" "At least 3 vehicles, maybe more." Adrian's jaw tightened. "We can't get to the car." "No shit. So what do we do?" Alara's mind raced. The files were in the box. The box was in her arms. If they got caught now, everything was gone. 3 years of work. The only leverage they had. She thought about Claire, waiting for evidence that would never come. She thought about all the people who'd been crushed by the same system now hunting them through Newcastle's empty streets. "We split up," she said. "Absolutely not. Adrian, listen to me. I said no. They want the files. If we're together, they get both. If we split, one of us has a shot. I'm not leaving you." Alara turned to face him, her expression fierce. "You don't have a choice. Take the box. Get to Claire. I'll draw them off." "That's insane. It's the only play we have." Another car turned onto the street. This one stopped at the corner, headlights cutting through the mist. A door opened. A figure stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the precision of someone who'd done this before. "They're coming," Adrian said, his voice tight. Alara shoved the box into his hands. "Train station, 3 blocks north. There's a 5 a.m. to Edinburgh. Get on it. Don't look back. Alara, go. Now." She didn't wait for him to argue. She stepped out of the doorway and started walking in the opposite direction. Not running, not hiding, just walking like she had every right to be there, like she was daring them to follow. It worked. The figure at the car shouted something. Footsteps pounded pavement. Alara broke into a sprint, cutting left down a side street, her boots slapping wet concrete. Behind her, the pursuit shifted, away from Adrian toward her. She risked a glance back and saw 3 of them now, fanning out, cutting angles like they'd trained for this. She ducked into a parking garage, took the stairs 2 at a time, lungs burning. 2nd level, 3rd. She could hear them below, coordinating over radios. On the 4th level, she found what she was looking for, a gap in the concrete barrier where maintenance access led to an adjacent building. Alara squeezed through, scraping her shoulder raw, and dropped into a narrow space between 2 buildings. She landed hard, ankle twisting, pain shooting up her leg. She bit down on a curse and kept moving, limping now, dragging herself toward the far end where morning light was just starting to bleed into the sky. She emerged onto a busier street. Early commuters, a bus idling at a stop. She climbed on without checking the route, collapsed into a seat near the back, and finally let herself breathe. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Train station, platform 3. Don't let them see you." She typed back, "You okay?" 3 dots. Then, "For now." Alara closed her eyes and let her head fall back against the window. Her ankle throbbed. Her hands were shaking. But Adrian was safe. The files were safe. For now. Bumped. Adrian made the train with 90 seconds to spare. He found an empty compartment in the last car, shoved the metal box under the seat, and pressed his forehead against the cold window as the station slid away. His heart was still hammering. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He kept seeing Alara walking into the open, drawing fire like it was nothing, like she'd done it 100 times before. Maybe she had. His phone buzzed, a message from Alara. "I'm clear, on a bus. Meet me in Edinburgh." He typed back, "Where?" "The castle. Tourist entrance, noon. That's 7 hours. Then don't be late." Adrian exhaled slowly. 7 hours. 7 hours to figure out what the hell they were going to do next. He pulled the box out from under the seat and opened it. 3 USB drives. Documents in plastic sleeves. A burner phone that looked like it had survived a war. He picked up one of the drives, turned it over in his hand. Such a small thing. Barely weighed anything. And yet people were willing to kill for it. His phone rang. Not a text this time. An actual call. The screen showed a number he recognized. His sister, Victoria. He almost didn't answer. But guilt, or habit, or some leftover shred of family loyalty made him hit accept. Vic. Where the hell are you? Her voice was sharp, clipped, the tone she used when she was barely holding it together. I can't tell you that. Adrian, this is serious. The palace is losing its mind. Uncle Richard has the entire security detail looking for you. There are police involved. Let them look. What is wrong with you? She sounded genuinely baffled now, like he'd suddenly started speaking a language she didn't understand. You just vanished. No explanation, no warning, and now you're all over the news with some woman who's apparently a criminal. She's not a criminal. That's not what they're saying. They're lying. Why would they lie? Because the truth is worse. Victoria went quiet. In the background, Adrian could hear voices, low, urgent. She was somewhere public, probably the palace. What truth? She asked finally, her voice dropping. Adrian hesitated. He'd known Victoria his whole life. She was 2 years older, sharper, more ruthless. She'd learned how to navigate the family's politics while Adrian was still trying to figure out why everyone talked in coded language. She'd survived by playing the game better than anyone, but she was still his sister. The arms deal, he said quietly. The one Uncle Richard was tied to. The offshore accounts, the shell companies. It's all real, Vic. And it's worse than anyone knows. Another long silence, then, you need to stop talking, right now. I'm not stopping. Adrian, listen to me. Whatever you think you know, whatever this woman has told you, her name is Alara. I don't care what her name is. She's using you. She's manipulating you to get revenge for losing her job. She lost her job because she told the truth. There is no truth. Victoria's voice cracked, frustration bleeding through. There's only what people believe. And right now they believe you've lost your mind. They believe she's dangerous. If you keep pushing this, you'll destroy everything, not just yourself, the whole family. Maybe the family deserves to be destroyed. Victoria sucked in a breath. You don't mean that. Yes, I do. Adrian, I have evidence, Vic, documents, proof, and I'm going to release it. You can't. Watch me. He hung up. His hands were shaking again. He'd just burned the last bridge. No going back now. The train rattled north through the countryside. Fields, stone walls, sheep clustered under trees. Adrian watched it all blur past and felt like he was watching his old life disappear with it. His phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from Simon. We need to talk. Face to face. Name the place. Adrian stared at the screen. Simon wasn't family. He was a functionary, a problem solver. But he'd also been decent, in his way. He'd never lied to Adrian, even when the truth was ugly. He typed back, "Why should I trust you?" The response came fast. "Because I'm the only one left who's trying to help you." Adrian closed his eyes. He didn't believe that, but he also didn't have many options. Edinburgh, the Elephant House, 2 p.m. I'll be there. Adrian pocketed his phone and tried to think through the angles. Meeting Simon was risky, but if he could get information, find out how much the palace knew, how coordinated the response was, it might be worth it, or it might be a trap. Only one way to find out. Alara got off the bus in a town she didn't recognize and immediately found a pharmacy. She bought bandages, painkillers, a cheap hoodie, and a baseball cap. In the bathroom of a coffee shop, she cleaned the scrape on her shoulder, wrapped her ankle, and changed into the hoodie. She shoved her canvas jacket into the trash and walked out looking like a different person. Her phone had 6 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. She ignored them all and texted Adrian. Change of plans. Don't go to the castle. Too exposed. His response came a minute later. Where then? I'll find you. Stay in public places. Keep moving. Alara, what's going on? She hesitated. She didn't want to tell him that she'd spotted the same black sedan twice since getting off the bus. that someone was still tracking her, even after she ditched her jacket, her phone's SIM card, everything. Just trust me. I'll explain when I see you. She pocketed the phone and kept walking. Her ankle screamed with every step, but she didn't slow down. Couldn't. The sedan was 2 blocks back now, crawling along the curb like a shark. She turned into a shopping center, lost herself in the crowd, bought a scarf from a street vendor and wrapped it around her hair, ducked into a bookstore, out the back, through an alley that smelled like rotting fruit. When she finally stopped to catch her breath, the sedan was gone, but her relief was short-lived. Her phone buzzed, a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. Hello? A man's voice, smooth, cultured, faintly amused. Miss Quinn, you're quite difficult to catch. Her blood went cold. Who is this? Someone who would very much like to have a conversation, in person. Not interested. I think you will be, because I have something you want. I doubt that. Adrian's sister, Victoria. Lovely woman, very concerned about her brother. She's been asking questions, uncomfortable questions. It would be a shame if something happened to her. Alara's grip on the phone tightened. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your messages. She pulled the phone away from her ear. A new text, a photo. Victoria Vale, walking out of a building Alara didn't recognize. The angle suggested a long lens taken from across the street. The timestamp was 15 minutes ago. What do you want? Alara asked, her voice flat. The files. All of them. In exchange, we leave you and Adrian alone. No charges. No harassment. You disappear, we disappear. Everyone wins. And Victoria remains blissfully unaware of how close she came to being collateral damage. Alara's mind raced. This wasn't about the files. Not really. This was about control. About making sure she and Adrian understood how powerless they were. How do I know you'll keep your word? She asked. You don't. But consider the alternative. The line went dead. Alara stood in the alley, phone in hand, pulse pounding in her ears. They had her. They knew it. She knew it. But they'd made a mistake. They'd shown her that Victoria mattered, that they were willing to use her, which meant Victoria was leverage, and leverage worked both ways. She pulled up Adrian's number and called. Alara, where are you? Listen to me. They threatened your sister. What? They have eyes on her. They sent me a photo. They want the files in exchange for leaving her alone. Adrian's voice went deadly quiet. Who? I don't know, but they're serious. Where is she? I don't know that either. But Adrian, if they're watching her, that means she's valuable to them, which means she knows something. Vic doesn't know anything. She called you, didn't she? On the train. What did she say? Adrian hesitated. She told me to stop. Said I was going to destroy the family. Did she sound scared? She sounded angry. Angry people say things they don't mean. Scared people tell the truth. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then, you think she knows about the files. I think she knows more than she's saying, and I think we need to find out what that is. How? We talk to her, face to face, before they do. She's in London. We're in wherever the hell we are. Then we go to London. That's suicide. So is giving them the files. Adrian exhaled slowly. She could hear the gears turning, the risk assessment, the impossible math of trying to stay alive while doing the right thing. Okay, he said finally. London. But we do it smart. We find Vic, we get her somewhere safe, and then we figure out what she knows. Agreed. Where do we meet? King's Cross Station, 6 p.m. Don't use your credit card. Don't use your phone except to text me. And Adrian? Yeah? If anything feels wrong, run. Don't wait for me. Just run. You too. She hung up and started walking again. London was 6 hours south. She had no money, no ID that wasn't compromised, and a sprained ankle that was turning her leg into a useless weight. But she'd been in worse spots. Probably. By the time Adrian reached Edinburgh, the morning news had exploded with fresh headlines. He saw them on his phone, on the screens of other passengers, in the newspapers people were reading on the platform. Duke Adrian's fugitive lover, new evidence of criminal past palace. Insider, She's dangerous and delusional. Police seek Ilara Quinn for questioning in fraud investigation. None of it was true. All of it was working. Adrian bought a ticket to London using cash he'd pulled from an ATM in Newcastle. He kept his head down, bought a sandwich he didn't eat, and found a corner of the station where he could think. His meeting with Simon was in 4 hours. Ilara wouldn't be in London until tonight. That left him with time to kill and nothing to do but sit with the growing certainty that he'd made a catastrophic mistake. Not leaving. Not protecting Ilara. Not going after the truth. The mistake was thinking any of it would matter, because the people he was up against didn't care about truth. They cared about power. And power didn't negotiate. It crushed. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The Elephant House. 2 p.m. Come alone. If you don't, your sister pays the price. Adrian's stomach dropped. He typed back, "Who is this?" No response. He tried calling. The line was dead. He sat there, staring at the screen, trying to think through the angles. Simon had suggested the Elephant House. This message confirmed it, which meant either Simon was setting him up or someone else knew about the meeting and was using it as bait. Either way, he was walking into a trap. But if they had Victoria, if they were serious about hurting her, he didn't have a choice. He stood, shouldered the metal box, and headed for the exit. The Elephant House was a cafe in Edinburgh's Old Town, famous for being the place where some writer had supposedly drafted a fantasy novel about wizards. Adrian had been there once, years ago, dragged by Victoria during a family trip. He remembered dark wood, crammed tables, tourists everywhere. He arrived 20 minutes early and found a spot by the window where he could watch the door. The place was crowded, students with laptops, tourists with cameras, locals nursing coffee and ignoring everyone. Simon arrived exactly at 2 p.m. He looked worse than Adrian had ever seen him. Rumpled suit, bloodshot eyes, the kind of exhaustion that came from too many sleepless nights. He spotted Adrian, crossed the room, and sat down without asking. "You look like hell," Adrian said. "So do you. Who else knows about this meeting?" Simon's jaw tightened. "What are you talking about?" Adrian pulled out his phone and showed him the message. Simon read it, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, then fear, then something harder to read. "I didn't send that," he said. "I know, so who did?" "I don't know. But if they're threatening Victoria—" He stopped, rubbed his face. "This is worse than I thought." "How bad?" Simon leaned in, voice dropping. "The palace is in full crisis mode. Your uncle's been in meetings with the Home Secretary, the head of MI5, people I've never even heard of. They're not treating this like a scandal. They're treating it like a national security threat. Because of the files. Because of what's in them. Adrian, if even half of what I've heard is true, it's all true." Simon went pale. "Then you need to destroy them, right now, before this goes any further." "I'm not destroying anything." "You don't understand. These people, they don't play by rules. They'll kill you. They'll kill her. They'll kill anyone who gets in the way. They already tried. And they'll try again, and next time they'll succeed." Adrian met his eyes. "So what do you want me to do? Roll over? Pretend none of this happened?" "I want you to survive." "At what cost?" Simon looked away. For a moment, he looked like he might cry. "I've spent 19 years cleaning up messes for people who don't deserve it. I've lied. I've covered up. I've watched good people get destroyed because they asked the wrong questions. And I told myself it was fine, that it was just part of the job." He looked back at Adrian. "But this is different. This isn't about protecting the crown. This is about protecting criminals. So help me. I can't. If they find out I'm talking to you, then we make sure they don't find out." Simon shook his head. "It's too late for that. They already know. Why do you think I look like this? I've had 2 agents outside my flat for the last 3 days. My phone's tapped. My emails are monitored. They're waiting for me to screw up." Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. "Then why are you here?" "Because you're right. About all of it. And because someone needs to say it out loud." Simon reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He slid it across the table. "Victoria's schedule. Where she'll be tonight. There's a gap between 7 and 9 p.m. No security. No minders. Just her." Adrian picked up the paper. An address in Kensington. A private residence. Why are you giving me this? Because if you're going to do this thing, if you're really going to blow this open, you need to make sure she's safe first. They'll use her. They'll use anyone. I know. Simon stood. He looked like he'd aged a decade in the last 5 minutes. I'm sorry for everything. Simon, don't contact me again. If you do, I can't help you. I won't even try. He walked out. Adrian sat there, staring at the paper, trying to process what had just happened. Simon had just committed career suicide. Maybe actual suicide, depending on how ruthless the people hunting them really were. And he'd done it anyway. Adrian folded the paper, pocketed it, and stood. He had 4 hours to get to London. 4 hours to figure out how to get to Victoria without getting caught. 4 hours to decide if he was really willing to risk everything, including his sister's life, for the truth. He walked out of the cafe and into the cold afternoon air. His phone buzzed. Another message from Alara. Change of plans. Don't meet me at King's Cross. Too exposed. I'll find you. He typed back, How? Her response was immediate. I always do. Adrian smiled despite everything. She probably would. He headed for the train station, the metal box heavy under his arm, and tried not to think about how many ways this could go wrong. Behind him, 2 men in dark coats stepped out of a parked car and followed. Adrian didn't notice them at first. The 2 men in dark coats blended into the afternoon crowd. Just another pair of commuters heading somewhere, faces blank, movements efficient. It wasn't until he reached the platform that instinct prickled at the back of his neck. He glanced over his shoulder. They were 20 feet behind him, not looking at him, not looking at anything, really. Just standing there with the stillness of people who knew how to wait. Adrian's pulse kicked up. He stepped onto the train, moved through 2 cars, and found a seat near the rear. Through the window, he watched the platform. The 2 men didn't board. They just stood there, watching the train pull away. He exhaled slowly. Paranoia, maybe. Or maybe they were coordinating with someone else. Either way, he needed to move faster. The train lurched south toward London. Adrian opened the metal box again, pulled out one of the USB drives, and turned it over in his palm. He'd been carrying this thing for hours now, but he hadn't actually looked at what was on it. He pulled out his laptop, ancient, half-broken, but it still worked, and plugged the drive in. Files, dozens of them, spreadsheets, PDFs, scanned documents with official letterheads. He opened one at random. It was a bank transfer receipt. £2 million moved from an account registered in the Cayman Islands to a shell company in Cyprus. The date was 3 years ago. The account holder's name had been redacted, but the receiving company's name was there. Cormorant Holdings Limited. Adrian searched the name. It came up in another document, a contract for arms shipments to a country under international sanctions. The contract had been signed by someone named Gerald Pritchard, Director of Operations. He searched that name, too. Pritchard was a former MP, now working as a consultant for a private equity firm. The same firm his uncle, the Duke of Marlborough, advised. Adrian kept digging. More transfers, more contracts, more names he recognized, people he'd sat next to at state dinners, people who'd smiled and shaken his hand and told him how proud they were of the family. All of them dirty. His phone buzzed. A message from Alara. I'm on a train. Should be in London by 7. You? He typed back. Same. Got Victoria's location. Kensington. 7 p.m. window. How'd you get that? Simon. You trust him? Adrian hesitated. I think so. Thinking isn't knowing, I know, but it's all we have. 3 dots. Then, okay. Meet me at Paddington Station. We'll go to Vic together. Agreed. He pocketed his phone and went back to the files. There was so much here. Too much. He'd need days to go through it all properly. But even from the fragments he was seeing, the picture was clear. This wasn't just corruption. This was a system. A network of people moving money, weapons, influence, all under the cover of legitimate business. And his family, his name, was tangled up in the center of it. He thought about Victoria's voice on the phone. You'll destroy everything. Maybe she was right. Maybe this would destroy the family, the title, the legacy. But what kind of legacy was built on this? He closed the laptop and stared out the window. The countryside was giving way to suburbs now. rows of identical houses, industrial parks, the gray sprawl of outer London. Somewhere out there, people were living normal lives, going to work, picking up kids from school, worrying about mortgages and dinner and whether it would rain. He used to think he was one of them, just a person underneath the title. But sitting here with a box full of evidence that could topple governments, he realized how naive that was. He'd never been normal. He'd just been lucky enough to ignore it. The train pulled into King's Cross at 6:15 p.m. Adrian kept his head down, joined the flow of passengers, and headed for the tube. Paddington was 3 stops away. He'd be there by 6:30, plenty of time. Except when he reached the tube entrance, 2 uniformed officers were standing at the barriers, checking tickets, checking faces, looking for someone. Adrian turned and walked the other way. His heart was hammering now. They were closing in, not just private security anymore, actual police. He ducked into a pharmacy, bought a cheap pair of reading glasses and a knit cap, and changed his appearance as best he could. It wasn't much, but it might buy him time. He walked instead. Paddington was 2 miles west. His legs burned. The metal box felt like it weighed 50 pounds. But he kept moving. By the time he reached the station, it was 6:50 p.m. He scanned the crowds, looking for Alara. No sign of her. He pulled out his phone. No new messages. 6:55 p.m. Still nothing. He texted her. "I'm here. Where are you?" No response. 7 p.m. 7. The crowd shifted around him. Travelers, tourists, people in suits heading home. Adrian stood near the information board, trying not to look like someone who was being hunted. His phone buzzed. Finally. But it wasn't from Alara. It was from Victoria. "Adrian, I know you're in London. We need to talk. Now. Meet me at the flat. Alone. If you bring her, I can't help you." Adrian stared at the screen. His first instinct was to ignore it. Victoria was compromised. She had to be. But then again, Simon had said she'd be alone tonight. No security, no minders. If that was true, this might be their only chance. He typed back, "How do I know you're alone?" "You don't. But if you don't trust me, you're already dead." He swore under his breath. She was right. He was out of options. He texted Alara again. Change of plans. Vic reached out. "Going to meet her. Kensington address. If you don't hear from me in an hour, assume the worst." He waited. No response. He couldn't wait any longer. He headed for the exit, hailed a cab, and gave the driver the Kensington address Simon had written down. The flat was in a converted Georgian townhouse, the kind of place where every window cost more than most people made in a year. Adrian paid the driver, climbed the steps, and buzzed the intercom. Victoria's voice crackled through. "Come up, 3rd floor." The door unlocked. Adrian pushed through and took the stairs. The building smelled like old money. Wood polish, fresh flowers, the faint musk of expensive perfume. Victoria was waiting at the door. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, no makeup, wearing jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. He'd never seen her like this. She was always polished, always in control. Not tonight. "Get inside," she said, pulling him in and locking the door behind them. The flat was small but elegant. Minimalist furniture, high ceilings, a window overlooking the street. Victoria went to the window, pulled the curtain aside just enough to check outside, then let it fall. "Are you being followed?" she asked. "I don't think so." "You don't think or you don't know?" "I don't know, Vic. I'm not exactly trained for this." She turned to face him, and for the first time he saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. "You need to leave London. Tonight. Right now." "I can't." "Yes, you can. You get on a train, you get on a plane, you disappear. I'll handle the rest." "Handle what?" "The mess you've made." Adrian set the metal box down on the coffee table. "You mean the truth?" Victoria stared at the box. "Is that it? The files?" "Yes." "Have you looked at them?" "Some of them." "And?" "And it's worse than I thought." Victoria closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet. "I told you to stay out of it. You knew." Adrian's voice was flat. "You knew about the arms deals, the money laundering, all of it." "I didn't know everything, but I knew enough." "And you did nothing." What was I supposed to do? Her voice cracked. I'm not you, Adrian. I can't just walk away. I have responsibilities. People depend on me. People are dying because of what these files cover. People die every day. That's not my fault. It is if you're protecting the people responsible. Victoria flinched like he'd slapped her. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. She sank onto the couch, head in her hands. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then quietly, Uncle Richard came to me 6 months ago. He told me there was an investigation, internal, quiet. He said someone had leaked documents. He didn't know who, but he knew it was bad. He asked me to help him find out who it was. And you agreed. He's family, Adrian. What was I supposed to say? You were supposed to say no. Easy for you to say. You don't have a title. You don't have responsibilities. You just get to be right all the time. Adrian crouched in front of her. Vic, listen to me. Alara didn't leak those documents. She investigated them, legally, and they destroyed her career because she got too close. Then why is she with you? Because I found the same things she did, and because she's the only person I trust. Victoria looked up, eyes red. They'll kill her, Adrian. If you release those files, they'll kill her, and they'll kill you. And they'll probably kill me just for talking to you. Not if we do it right. There is no right way to do this. Yes, there is. We release everything, all at once. Too much for them to bury. Too many people see it. The press, the public, Parliament, everyone. And then what? You think people will care? You think anyone will do anything? I think they won't have a choice. Victoria laughed, but it was bitter. You're so naive. Maybe, but I'm also right. She shook her head. You're going to get us all killed. Or I'm going to save us. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. What is it? Adrian asked. She didn't answer. She just stood, walked to the window, and looked out again. Vic, what is it? They're here. Adrian's stomach dropped. Who? I don't know. Black cars, 3 of them, just pulled up outside. Adrian grabbed the metal box and moved to the window. She was right. 3 black SUVs parked in a line, doors opening, men stepping out, 6 of them, maybe more. Back door? Adrian asked. Fire escape, kitchen window. They ran. Victoria led the way through the flat into a narrow kitchen. She shoved the window open, kicked out the screen, and climbed onto the metal grating. Adrian followed, the box clutched under one arm. Below them, the alley was dark and narrow. They climbed down fast, boots clanging on metal. Adrian's hands were slick with sweat. He almost dropped the box twice. They hit the ground and ran. Behind them, shouts, footsteps on the fire escape. The alley spat them out onto a side street. They turned left, then right, weaving through the maze of Kensington's back streets. Adrian's lungs burned. Victoria was faster than he expected, pulling ahead, glancing back to make sure he was keeping up. Where are we going? He shouted. Tube station, 2 blocks. They rounded a corner and almost collided with a woman standing in the middle of the sidewalk. Alara. She looked like she'd been through a war. Her hoodie was torn. Her face was scratched, but her eyes were sharp, alive. You're late, she said. How did you... Adrian started. Tracked your phone. Now move. They ran together now, all 3 of them, cutting through a park, across a street, down into the tube station. Alara swiped a card she must have stolen, shoved them through the barrier. They caught a train just as the doors were closing. Inside, they collapsed onto seats, gasping for air. The train lurched forward. Adrian looked at Victoria, then at Alara, then at the metal box still clutched in his hands. We're not going to make it, Victoria said. Alara wiped blood from her lip. Not with that attitude. This isn't a joke. I know, but giving up isn't an option either. Victoria stared at her. So what do? We go public, tonight, right now, before they can stop us. Adrian pulled out his phone. I'll call Claire. No, Alara said. No phone calls. They're listening. Then how? She reached into her pocket and pulled out a different phone. A burner. I've been in contact with Claire since Newcastle. She's ready. She's been ready. We just need to get the files to her. How? In person. Where is she? Camden. Warehouse converted into a studio. She runs a live stream from there. Adrian checked his watch. 8 8:30 p.m. How long to get there? 20 minutes, maybe less. And if they're waiting for us? Alara met his eyes. Then we fight. The train rattled through the tunnel. Adrian looked at the metal box. 3 years of Alara's life. Evidence that could dismantle an entire network of corruption, the only leverage they had left. Okay, he said. Let's do it. Victoria grabbed his arm. Adrian, if you do this, there's no going back. You'll be exiled, stripped of your title. You'll lose everything. I already lost everything. I just didn't realize it until now. She looked like she wanted to argue, but instead, she just nodded. Then I'm coming with you. Vic, I'm not letting you do this alone. Alara looked at her. If you're coming, you need to be sure, because once we start, we don't stop, no matter what. Victoria's jaw set. I'm sure. The train pulled into Camden Town Station. They got off, climbed the stairs, and emerged into the cold night air. The streets were crowded, pubs spilling over with people, music thumping from somewhere, the smell of fried food and cigarette smoke. Alara led them through the chaos, down a side street, past shuttered shops and graffitied walls. The warehouse was at the end of a dead-end alley, a hulking brick building with blacked-out windows. She knocked 3 times. A pause. Then twice more. The door opened. A woman stood there, late 30s, short hair, glasses, the look of someone who hadn't slept in a week but was running on pure caffeine and spite. Claire, Alara said, about time. Claire's eyes flicked to Adrian, then to Victoria. You brought guests. They're with me. Good. Get inside. We're live in 10. They stepped into the warehouse. It had been converted into a makeshift studio, cameras, lights, a desk cluttered with laptops and monitors. 2 other people were there, both younger, both moving with the frantic energy of people racing a deadline. Claire pointed at the metal box. That it? Yes, Alara said. How much material? Enough to keep you busy for months. Then let's start with the worst of it. Alara opened the box, pulled out the USB drives, and handed them to Claire. Financial records, arms deals, shell companies, it's all there. Names, dates, amounts. Claire plugged one of the drives into her laptop. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the files. Jesus, this is huge. That's why they're trying to kill us, Adrian said. Claire looked up. Are they outside right now? Probably. Then we need to move fast. She turned to her team. Get the cameras ready. We're going live in 5. I want full redundancy. Stream to every platform simultaneously. If they try to shut us down, I want backups running. One of the younger crew members nodded and started typing furiously. Claire turned back to Adrian. You ready to talk? About what? About why you walked away. About what you found. About why this matters. Adrian's throat tightened. I don't know what to say. Then tell the truth. That's all anyone wants. Alara put a hand on his shoulder. You've got this. He nodded. He didn't feel like he had it, but he didn't have a choice. Claire positioned him in front of the cameras, adjusted the lights, clipped a microphone to his collar. Adrian looked at the lens, at his own reflection in the black glass. He looked like a stranger. Claire counted down. 3, 2, 1. The red light blinked on. Good evening, Claire said, her voice calm, professional. This is an emergency broadcast. My name is Claire Winters, and tonight I'm joined by Duke Adrian Vale, who has information that will fundamentally change how we understand power in this country. She turned to Adrian. Your Grace, why don't you start by telling us why you left? Adrian swallowed hard. His hands were shaking. He gripped the edge of the desk to steady them. I left, he said slowly, because I couldn't stay. I couldn't be part of a system that protects criminals, that hides the truth, that values power over people. Can you be more specific? Adrian reached for the USB drive Claire had plugged in. He held it up to the camera. This drive contains evidence of illegal arms deals, money laundering, and corruption at the highest levels of government and business. People I've known my whole life, people I trusted, people who smiled at me while they were destroying lives for profit. Claire leaned forward. And you're releasing this information tonight? Yes. Knowing the consequences? Yes. What do you hope will happen? Adrian looked directly at the camera. I hope people will see the truth. I hope they'll demand accountability. And I hope, his voice cracked, I hope it's not too late to fix this. Before Claire could ask another question, one of the crew members shouted, "We've got company!" Everyone turned. Through the blacked-out windows, flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Voices. Footsteps. "How many?" Claire asked. "At least 10. Maybe more." Adrian stood. "We need to keep streaming." "I know." Claire turned to her team. "Lock the doors, barricade them if you have to. We stay live as long as possible." The pounding started. Heavy. Rhythmic. The kind of pounding that meant someone was about to break through. Alara grabbed Adrian's arm. "We need to upload everything. Now." "We are uploading," Claire said, fingers flying over her keyboard. "But it's going to take time." "We don't have time." The door shuddered. Wood splintered. Victoria was pale. "What do we do?" Adrian looked at the camera, still recording, still live. He made a decision. "Claire, give me the drive." "What?" "The original." "Give it to me." She hesitated, then pulled it from the laptop and handed it to him. Adrian turned to Alara. "How much have you uploaded?" "Maybe a third?" "That's enough. They'll have something to work with." "Adrian, what are you doing?" He looked at her, really looked, memorized her face. "I'm buying you time." No, absolutely not. If I walk out there with the drive, they'll follow me. You stay here. You make sure the upload finishes. You make sure this gets out. I'm not letting you do this. You don't have a choice." The door cracked. One more hit and it would give. Adrian grabbed the metal box, still holding the other 2 drives and the documents, and headed for the back exit. Alara grabbed him. "Adrian, don't." He kissed her, fast, hard, like it might be the last time. "Stay alive," he said. Then he ran. The back door led to another alley. Adrian burst through, metal box clutched against his chest, and sprinted toward the street. Behind him, shouts. The beam of a flashlight finding him. He ran harder. The street ahead was brighter, more crowded. If he could reach it, maybe he'd have a chance. Maybe... A figure stepped out of the shadows. Detective Inspector Hargrave. Adrian skidded to a stop. Hargrave smiled. Not friendly, not cruel, just satisfied. "End of the road, Your Grace." Adrian looked behind him. 3 more men, closing in. He was trapped. Hargrave held out his hand. "The box. Now." Adrian's mind raced. Every option ended with him losing, except one. He opened the box, pulled out the 2 remaining USB drives, and held them up. "You want them?" he said. "Come get them." And then he threw them. Not at Hargrave, not at the men behind him. Into the street, where cars were moving, where people were walking, where they'd scatter, fall, disappear into the chaos. Hargrave's face went white. "No!" But it was too late. The drives hit the pavement, skittered under a bus, a car swerved, someone shouted, and in the confusion, Adrian ran, not away from them, toward them. He slammed into Hargrave, knocking him sideways, and kept running. Hands grabbed at him. He twisted free. Someone tackled him from behind. He hit the ground hard, air bursting from his lungs. They dragged him up, slammed him against a wall. His head cracked against brick. Stars exploded in his vision. "Where are the drives?" Hargrave's voice was right in his ear, low and furious. Adrian tasted blood. He smiled. "Gone." Hargrave hit him. Hard. Adrian's head snapped sideways. "Where are the drives?" "I told you. Gone. Good luck finding them in this mess." Hargrave hit him again and again. Pain bloomed across Adrian's face, his ribs, his stomach. But he didn't stop smiling. Because back in the warehouse, Alara was still uploading. The stream was still live, and every second he bought her was a second closer to the truth getting out. Hargrave stepped back, breathing hard. "Take him. We'll deal with him later." They dragged Adrian toward one of the SUVs. He didn't fight. Couldn't. His body was shutting down, pain overriding everything else. As they shoved him into the back seat, he looked up at the warehouse one last time. The lights were still on. The stream was still running. They hadn't stopped her. He closed his eyes and let the darkness take him. Adrian woke to the smell of disinfectant and the throb of his own heartbeat pulsing through his skull. His right eye wouldn't open all the way. His ribs screamed when he tried to breathe. He was in a chair, metal, bolted to the floor, in a room with no windows and fluorescent lights that hummed like angry insects. Across from him sat a man he'd never seen before. Mid-50s, gray suit, the kind of bland face that disappeared in crowds. He was reading something on a tablet, utterly unbothered by Adrian's presence. Adrian tried to speak. His throat was raw. "Where am I?" The man didn't look up. "Somewhere you should have avoided." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." Adrian tested the restraints on his wrists. Zip ties, tight enough to cut circulation. He forced himself to stay calm, to think. "How long have I been here?" 3 hours. "And Alara?" Now the man looked up. His eyes were cold, analytical. "Still at large, for now." "The stream?" A flicker of irritation crossed the man's face. "Shut down 40 minutes after you left, but not before 30,000 people watched it. Unfortunate timing." Adrian felt something loosen in his chest. 30,000, that was enough. That was real. "So what now?" Adrian asked. "You kill me? Make me disappear?" "Nothing so dramatic." The man set the tablet aside. "You're going to record a statement. You'll say you were coerced by Miss Quinn, that she manipulated you, that the documents were fabricated as part of a revenge scheme against people who ended her career. No one will believe that. Enough people will. That's all we need. And if I refuse?" The man stood, walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the handle. "Then we move to less pleasant methods of persuasion, and Miss Quinn's life expectancy drops to approximately 48 hours. He left. Adrian sat in the chair, testing the restraints again. The zip ties bit into his skin. His head pounded. But his mind was working now, sorting through options, angles, anything he could use. They hadn't killed him. That meant they needed him, needed his cooperation, which meant he still had leverage. He just had to figure out what it was. The door opened again. This time, it was someone Adrian recognized. His uncle, the Duke of Marlborough. Richard Vale was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with the kind of bearing that came from generations of people bowing when he entered a room. He wore a three-piece suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His face was tight with controlled fury. "You stupid boy," he said quietly. Adrian said nothing. Richard pulled up a chair and sat, close enough that Adrian could smell his cologne, something expensive and vaguely medicinal. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I told the truth. You destroyed your family." "No, you did that. I just exposed it." Richard's jaw clenched. For a moment, Adrian thought he might hit him, but he didn't. He just exhaled slowly and leaned back. "That journalist filled your head with nonsense," Richard said. "Conspiracy theories, allegations with no proof." "There's proof. You've seen it." "What I've seen is a collection of documents taken out of context and arranged to tell a story that doesn't exist. The bank transfers are real. The contracts are real. The shell companies are real. Business transactions, all legal, all above board. Arms deals to sanctioned regimes are legal? When conducted through proper channels with government approval, yes." Adrian stared at him. "You actually believe that, don't you?" "I believe in protecting this country's interests. Sometimes that requires difficult decisions. Difficult decisions like profiting from war." Richard's expression hardened. "You think the world runs on ideals? On morality? It doesn't. It runs on power. On money. On people willing to make the choices that keep the machine running. You were born into that machine, Adrian. You were supposed to be part of it." "I don't want to be part of it." "Then you're a fool." They sat in silence. Adrian could hear voices outside, low, urgent. Someone was arguing about procedure, about legality, about what to do with him. "There's still a way out of this," Richard said finally. "For both of us." "I'm listening." "You record the statement. You discredit Quinn. You return to your duties. In exchange, we drop everything. No charges, no consequences. You get your life back." "What life? The one where I smile at dinners and pretend I don't know what you are?" "Yes, exactly that life." Adrian laughed. It hurt his ribs, but he couldn't stop. "You really think I'd take that deal? I think you're smart enough to realize you don't have a choice." "There's always a choice." Richard stood. "Then you've made yours, and you'll live with the consequences." He walked to the door, stopped, and looked back. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry it came to this. You were always my favorite nephew." Funny way of showing it. Richard left. Adrian was alone again. He closed his eyes and tried to think. The stream had gone out. 30,000 people had watched. But that didn't mean anything would change. The man in the gray suit was right. They'd spin it, discredit Alara, make Adrian look like a victim of manipulation. Unless the files were still out there. The drives he'd thrown into the street. If someone had picked them up, if they'd been uploaded somewhere, shared, duplicated, then shutting down one stream wouldn't matter. But that was a big if. His only hope now was that Alara was still free, still fighting. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time moved strangely in the windowless room. Adrian drifted in and out of consciousness, pain pulling him under, then spitting him back out. At some point, the door opened again. This time it was the man in the gray suit. Behind him, two others. One carried a camera. "Time to make your statement," the man said. Adrian shook his head. No. That wasn't a request. They cut the zip ties, hauled him up, and shoved him into a different chair. This one faced the camera. Lights came on, harsh and blinding. Someone clipped a microphone to his collar. The man in the gray suit stood just out of frame. "You're going to read this." He held up a sheet of paper. Word for word. No improvising. Adrian squinted at the text. It was worse than he'd imagined. A full confession that Alara had blackmailed him, threatened his family, fabricated evidence, that he'd been coerced into running away. "No," Adrian said again. The man nodded to someone behind Adrian. Pain exploded in his shoulder. Someone had grabbed the spot where he'd hit the wall earlier. Adrian gasped, vision whiting out. "Read it!" Adrian's hands were shaking. He could barely hold the paper, but he looked at the camera, at the red light blinking, and made a choice. "My name is Adrian Vale," he said, his voice hoarse. "And everything on this paper is a lie." The man in the gray suit moved fast. He grabbed the paper, crushed it. "Cut the feed, now!" But Adrian kept talking. "I wasn't coerced. I wasn't manipulated. I left because I found evidence of corruption at the highest levels of government and business. Evidence that people like my uncle, the Duke of Marlborough, have been profiting from illegal arms deals for years." "Shut him up." Someone grabbed Adrian from behind, hand clamping over his mouth. But he bit down hard, tasted blood. The hand jerked away. Adrian lunged forward, knocking over the camera, sending it clattering to the floor. "The files are real," he shouted. "The evidence is real, and you can't bury it anymore." They dragged him back, slammed him against the wall. His head cracked against concrete. Everything went gray for a moment. When his vision cleared, the man in the gray suit was standing over him, breathing hard. "You just signed your own death warrant," he said. Adrian smiled through the pain. "Good. Make me a martyr. See how that works out for you." The man's expression flickered, just for a second, just long enough for Adrian to see doubt there. Because Adrian was right. They couldn't kill him now. Not after 30,000 people had watched him speak on a live stream. Not after he'd just accused them on camera again. If he died now, it would only confirm everything. They were trapped. And they knew it. The man in the gray suit stepped back. "Get him out of my sight." They threw Adrian back in the metal chair, zip-tied his wrists again, and left him alone. Adrian's head lolled forward. His body was shutting down, pain and exhaustion overwhelming everything else. But he was smiling, because he'd won. Not the war, but this battle. They couldn't kill him. They couldn't use him. All they could do was hold him and hope the story died on its own. But stories like this didn't die. They spread. Somewhere outside this room, Alara was still out there, still fighting, and as long as she was free, there was hope. Adrian let the darkness take him again. When he woke, the room was different, cleaner. A bed instead of a chair, an IV in his arm, a window, small, barred, but a window. He tried to sit up, pain lanced through his ribs. A voice stopped him. "Easy, you've got 3 cracked ribs and a concussion." Adrian turned his head. A woman sat in the corner, early 40s, short dark hair, wearing a blazer that looked rumpled from too many hours awake. She had a badge clipped to her belt. "Who are you?" Adrian asked. "Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Croft, Metropolitan Police." "Am I under arrest?" "Not yet. You're in protective custody." "Protective from who?" "From the people who want you dead." She stood, crossed the room, and looked out the window. You've caused quite a mess, Your Grace. That wasn't my intention. No. But it's what you did. She turned to face him. The stream went viral. 2 million views in the first 12 hours. The files started circulating online about an hour after that. Someone found the USB drives you through, uploaded them to 3 different platforms. We've been trying to shut it down, but it's too late. It's everywhere. Adrian felt something warm spread through his chest. And Alara? Still at large, but she's not the one we're worried about anymore. What do you mean? Croft pulled up a chair and sat. There are MPS calling for an inquiry. The press is demanding answers. The palace is in full meltdown. And your uncle? He's been questioned by serious fraud office investigators. Adrian stared at her. You're serious. Very. But here's the problem. Half the people in this investigation are compromised. People who've been paid off, who've looked the other way, who've benefited from the same system you just exposed. So we don't know who to trust, which is where you come in. How? You testify, publicly, in front of Parliament. You name names. You show the evidence. You make it impossible for them to hide. And if I do that, then you'll probably never be safe again. But you might actually change something. Adrian thought about that, about the cost, about what he'd already lost, about what was left to lose. I'll do it, he said. Croft nodded. I thought you might. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing, even if it was reckless as hell. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have to keep you alive long enough to testify. She left. Adrian lay back on his bed and stared at the ceiling. His body hurt. His life was in ruins. His family hated him. But for the first time in weeks, maybe years, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. 2 days later, Adrian was moved to a safe house on the outskirts of London. It was a nondescript building in a neighborhood full of nondescript buildings. Armed officers at every door. Cameras on every corner. Croft assured him it was secure. He didn't believe her, but he didn't have a choice. The testimony was scheduled for 5 days from now. The House of Commons had agreed to hold an emergency session. The entire country would be watching. Adrian spent those days preparing, going through the files with Croft and her team, identifying key documents, matching names to transactions, building a case that couldn't be dismantled. It was exhausting work. His ribs still ached, his head still throbbed, but he pushed through. On the 3rd day, Croft brought him a laptop. You've got a visitor, virtually. Adrian frowned. Who? She opened a video call. The screen flickered, then resolved into a familiar face. Alara. She looked tired, shadows under her eyes, hair pulled back messily. But she was alive. She was smiling. Hey, she said. Adrian's throat tightened. Hey, you look terrible. You should see the other guys. She laughed. It was brief, but real. I saw what you did. The statement. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. Probably both. Definitely both. Her expression softened. They told me you're testifying. Yeah. Are you ready? No, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's very on brand for you. They sat in silence for a moment. Adrian wanted to say so many things, that he was sorry, that he was scared, that he didn't know if any of this would matter, but he couldn't find the words. Alara spoke first. I've been working with Claire. We've been digging into the files, cross-referencing everything. We found something. What? Your uncle wasn't the only one involved. There's a network, MPS, business leaders, even some judges. It's bigger than we thought. Adrian's stomach sank. How much bigger? Big enough that taking down 1 or 2 people won't fix it. We need to expose the whole thing. And you think I can do that? I think if anyone can, it's you. Why? Because you're the one person they can't discredit. You're a duke, your family. If you say it's real, people will believe you. Some people. That's enough to start. Adrian looked at her through the screen. She believed in him. Even now, even after everything, she believed he could make a difference. He wished he had that much faith in himself. I'll do my best, he said. I know you will. She paused. Adrian, I need to tell you something. What? If this goes wrong, if they come after you, if something happens, I need you to know that none of this is your fault. You didn't start this, you just refused to look away. That's not true. I could have stayed silent, and you'd have spent the rest of your life hating yourself for it. He knew she was right, but that didn't make it easier. Are you safe? He asked. Safe enough? Victoria's helping me. She's got connections we didn't know about. Turns out she's not as complicit as we thought. Where is she now? Can't say, but she's working on something that might tip the scales. What? Alara smiled. You'll see, just trust her. The call ended. Adrian sat staring at the blank screen, mind racing. Victoria was helping. That was something he hadn't expected. Maybe she really had been trapped, just like he'd been. Maybe she just needed a push to break free. Or maybe she was playing an angle he couldn't see yet. Either way, he'd find out soon enough. The day of the testimony arrived cold and gray. Adrian was driven to Parliament in an unmarked car, flanked by armed escorts. The streets were packed, protesters on one side, counter-protesters on the other. Signs demanding justice. Signs defending the crown. The whole country seemed to be holding its breath. Inside the building, Adrian was led through back corridors to a small room where he waited. Croft came in, checked on him one last time. You ready? She asked. No. Good. Means you're taking this seriously. She handed him a folder. Your opening statement. Stick to the facts. Don't let them rattle you. What if I freeze? Then you take a breath and keep going. That's all anyone can do. She left. Adrian was alone with his thoughts, the weight of what was about to happen pressing down on him like a physical thing. A knock at the door. An aide stepped in. They're ready for you. Adrian stood, straightened his tie, took a breath. He walked into the chamber. The room was enormous, rows of seats rising in a horseshoe shape packed with MPs, journalists, cameras. Every eye turned to him as he entered. The silence was deafening. Adrian took his seat at the witness table, adjusted the microphone, looked up at the sea of faces watching him. The Speaker of the House leaned forward. Your Grace, thank you for appearing today. Before we begin, I must remind you that you are under oath. Do you understand? I do. Then please proceed with your opening statement. Adrian opened the folder. His hands were shaking. He glanced at the words Croft had written, then set the paper aside. He'd do this his own way. My name is Adrian Vale, he began, and for most of my life I've been part of a system I didn't understand. I attended the right schools. I shook the right hands. I smiled at the right dinners. I did what I was told because I thought that's what was expected of me. He paused. The room was silent. But 2 months ago, I learned something that changed everything. I learned that people I trusted, people I loved, were using their positions of power to profit from suffering. Arms deals, money laundering, corruption on a scale I couldn't have imagined. He reached for the folder, pulled out a document, and held it up. This is a bank transfer receipt. £2 million moved from an offshore account to a shell company in Cyprus. That company was used to facilitate weapons sales to a regime under international sanctions. The account holder was my uncle, the Duke of Marlborough. Gasps rippled through the chamber. A few MPs stood, shouting objections. The Speaker called for order. Adrian didn't stop. I have dozens more documents like this. Contracts, emails, financial records, all proving a network of corruption that reaches into Parliament, into business, into institutions we're supposed to trust. He looked directly at the cameras now. I'm not here to destroy my family. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because someone needs to say out loud what we've all known for too long, that power without accountability is just tyranny in a suit. The room erupted. Half the MPs were on their feet now, some shouting support, others demanding he be removed. The Speaker was pounding his gavel, but no one was listening. Adrian sat back and waited for the chaos to settle. It took 10 minutes. When order was finally restored, the questioning began. MPs from both sides took turns, some trying to discredit him, others trying to get him to name more names. Adrian answered carefully, precisely. He didn't exaggerate. He didn't speculate. He just stated facts. And slowly, grudgingly, the room began to believe him. By the time the session ended, 4 hours had passed. Adrian was exhausted, drained, barely able to stand. But he'd done it. He'd said everything he needed to say. As he left the chamber, Croft was waiting. How do you think it went? Adrian asked. Hard to say, but you didn't back down. That counts for something. They walked toward the exit. Outside, the crowd had grown. Thousands of people now, chanting, holding signs, demanding change. Croft stopped at the door. You should know, 2 MPs have already resigned, and the Serious Fraud Office just announced they're opening formal investigations into 6 companies named in your testimony. Adrian stared at her. That fast? That fast. Turns out when you expose corruption on live television, people have to respond. Adrian looked out at the crowd. At the faces, angry, hopeful, determined. At the signs demanding justice. Maybe this would work. Maybe it wouldn't. But for the first time, it felt possible. Croft's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then smiled. You've got another visitor. Come on. She led him through a side exit, away from the crowds, to a small courtyard behind the building. And there, standing by a bench, was Alara. She looked better than she had on the video call. Cleaner, rested, but still carrying that edge of exhaustion that came from weeks of running. Adrian crossed the courtyard. She met him halfway. They didn't say anything, just stood there looking at each other, both of them alive, both of them still standing. You did it, she said finally. We did it. No, you did. She reached out, touched his face gently where the bruises were still fading, and you paid for it. It was worth it. Was it? Ask me in a year, she smiled. Deal. Behind them, Croft cleared her throat. I hate to interrupt, but we need to move. There are still people who'd very much like both of you dead. Alara nodded. Where to? Safe house, different one. We'll keep you there until the investigations are complete. How long will that take? Months. Maybe years. Adrian looked at Alara. You up for that? I've got nothing else planned. They followed Croft back to the car. As they drove through London's streets, Adrian watched the city pass by. The buildings, the people, the life continuing around them like nothing had changed. But something had changed. He could feel it. A shift. Small, maybe, but real. His phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. I'm proud of you. Stay safe. We'll talk soon. Adrian typed back. Thank you. For everything. He pocketed the phone and leaned back in the seat. Alara's hand found his. He squeezed it. What happens now? She asked. I don't know, but we'll figure it out. Together? Together. The car turned a corner, heading toward whatever came next. Behind them, the sun was setting over Parliament, casting long shadows across the city. And for the first time in months, Adrian felt something close to peace. The safe house smelled like old coffee and cheap carpet cleaner. It was a flat in Croydon, tucked into a complex that looked like every other complex on the block. Gray concrete, small windows, the kind of place where neighbors minded their own business because they had their own problems. Adrian stood at the window, watching rain streak down the glass. It had been raining for 3 days straight. The city looked washed out, colorless, like someone had drained all the life from it. Behind him, Alara sat on the couch with her laptop, scrolling through news articles. They'd been here for 2 weeks now, 2 weeks of waiting, watching, hoping the investigations would move faster than the people trying to bury them. Another one resigned, Alara said without looking up. Adrian turned. Who? Lord Pemberton, Treasury Minister. His name was in the files, Shell Company Director for one of the offshore accounts. She scrolled further. That makes 7 resignations total, 8 if you count the MP who cited health reasons. Health reasons meaning he's scared. Probably. Adrian crossed the room and sat beside her. The couch was lumpy, springs poking through in places. Nothing like the furniture he'd grown up with. But it was real, solid. He'd take that over gilded lies any day. What about my uncle? He asked. Alara's expression darkened. Still denying everything. His lawyers are calling it a witch hunt, politically motivated. They're threatening to sue everyone from the SFO to the BBC. Will it work? It might. If enough people decide protecting the system is more important than exposing it. Adrian leaned back and closed his eyes. He was tired. The kind of tired that went bone deep. His ribs had healed, mostly. The bruises had faded to ugly yellow-green splotches, but the exhaustion remained. Do you regret it? Alara asked quietly. He opened his eyes. What? All of this. Walking away. Losing everything. Adrian thought about that. About the life he'd left behind. The dinners, the galas, the carefully scripted existence. About his family, who wouldn't speak to him now. About the title that no longer meant anything. No, he said, I don't. Even knowing how hard it would be? Especially knowing that. She smiled. It was small, but genuine. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, or the most stubborn. Can I be both? I suppose you can. His phone buzzed. A message from Croft. Need to see you both. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Important. Adrian showed it to Alara. She frowned. That's not ominous at all. Think it's good news or bad? With Croft? Could go either way. They spent the rest of the evening in companionable silence. Alara kept working, following leads, documenting everything. Adrian tried to read, but the words wouldn't stick. His mind kept drifting to tomorrow, to what Croft might say, to whether any of this would actually matter. At some point, he fell asleep on the couch. He woke to find Alara had draped a blanket over him. She was still at her laptop, hunched over, eyes red from staring at the screen. You should sleep, he said, his voice rough. Can't. Too much to do. Alara. She looked up. What? It's 3 a.m. Whatever you're working on can wait. No, it can't. Every hour we waste is an hour they use to cover their tracks. And burning yourself out helps how? She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She looked at the screen, at the endless documents, at the impossible task of cataloging years of corruption. Then she closed the laptop. Fine. You win. I usually do. Don't get cocky. She curled up on the other end of the couch. Adrian adjusted the blanket so it covered both of them. They lay there in the dark, listening to rain hammer the windows, and for a moment everything felt almost normal. Almost. Morning came gray and cold. They took the tube to meet Croft at a cafe in Southwark, something tucked away from the main streets. She was already there when they arrived, nursing a coffee that looked like it had gone cold an hour ago. You look awful, Alara said, sliding into the booth. Thank you. I feel worse. Croft pushed a folder across the table. This is everything we've compiled so far. Financial records, witness statements, documents corroborating your testimony. Adrian opened the folder. Pages and pages of evidence, enough to bury a dozen people. What's the verdict? He asked. Croft rubbed her face. Mixed. The investigations are moving forward. We've got enough to press charges against your uncle and at least 4 others, but there's pressure from above to slow walk it, make it go away quietly. Of course there is, Alara muttered. But, Croft continued, there's also public pressure. People are watching this. They want answers. And that's making it harder for the old guard to sweep it under the rug. So what happens now? Adrian asked. Now we push harder. We need more people to come forward. Whistleblowers, insiders, people who saw things but were too scared to say anything. She looked at Adrian. We need you to make another statement, a public appeal. Ask people to speak up. Adrian felt his stomach tighten. Another statement means another target on my back. I know, but it's the only way to keep the momentum going. He glanced at Alara. She was watching him, her expression unreadable. What do you think? He asked her. I think you didn't come this far to stop now. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. She leaned forward. Adrian, you've already put yourself out there. You've already testified. One more statement won't make you more of a target than you already are, but it might be the thing that tips the scales. He knew she was right. He hated it, but he knew. Okay, he said. I'll do it. Croft nodded. Good. We'll arrange it for tomorrow evening. Prime time, maximum reach. Where? Studio, controlled environment. Security will be tight. And after? After, you go back into hiding until we have enough to make arrests stick. Adrian exhaled slowly. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe months. Fantastic. Croft stood. I know this isn't what you signed up for, but you're making a difference. Don't forget that. She left cash on the table for the coffee and walked out. Adrian and Alara sat in silence for a moment. Then Alara reached across the table and took his hand. You okay? She asked. No, but I'll manage. That's becoming your catchphrase. I need better material. She smiled. Yeah, you really do. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Croft sent over talking points, but Adrian ignored most of them. He wasn't good at scripts. Never had been. He'd speak from the heart, say what needed saying, and hope it was enough. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led him here. The first moment he'd seen Alara in that coastal town, the decision to walk away, the files, the testimony, all of it cascading forward like dominoes falling. You awake? Alara's voice came from the other side of the room. Yeah, me too. Can't shut your brain off? Something like that. Adrian sat up. What are you thinking about? How strange this all is. 6 months ago, I was unemployed, blacklisted, hiding in a town no one had heard of. Now I'm part of the biggest corruption scandal in decades. Regret it? Meeting you? No. Everything else? Sometimes. He crossed the room and sat on the edge of her bed. For what it's worth, I'm glad I met you. Even though I dragged you into this mess? You didn't drag me. I chose to be here. She looked at him, and in the dim light, he could see the exhaustion in her face, the weight of everything she'd been carrying for years. What happens when this is over? She asked quietly. I don't know. Do you think we'll still... She stopped, started again. Do you think we'll still be us? Adrian thought about that, about the intensity of these last few months, about how crisis had a way of binding people together in ways that didn't always survive peace. I hope so, he said honestly, but I don't know. That's a terrible answer. I know, but it's the truth. She was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. Stay here tonight. Alara, not like that. Just stay. I don't want to be alone. He lay down beside her, on top of the covers, fully clothed. She curled into him, her head on his chest. He could feel her breathing, slow and steady. Eventually, they both fell asleep. The next evening, they arrived at the studio an hour early. Security checked them 3 times. Croft was there, along with 2 other officers Adrian didn't recognize. The set was simple: a chair, a plain backdrop, a single camera. Keep it short, Croft said as a technician clipped a microphone to Adrian's collar. 2 minutes, maybe 3. Any longer, and you lose people. Got it. And Adrian? Be yourself. People connect with authenticity. He nodded. His hands were shaking again. He shoved them in his pockets. The director counted down. Live in 5, 4, 3. The red light blinked on. Adrian took a breath and looked directly at the camera. My name is Adrian Vale. 2 weeks ago, I testified before Parliament about corruption within our government and institutions. Since then, 7 public figures have resigned. Multiple investigations have been opened, but this isn't over. He paused. There are people watching this who know things, who saw things, who've been scared to speak up because they didn't think anyone would believe them. I'm here to tell you, we believe you, and we need you. He leaned forward slightly. If you have information about corruption, about illegal deals, about people abusing their power, come forward. You're not alone. There are systems in place to protect you. There are people who will listen. Don't let fear win. Don't let them silence you. Another pause. I was terrified to speak up. I lost my family, my title, my entire life. But I do it again. Because some things are more important than comfort. Some things are more important than safety. And the truth is one of them. He looked into the camera for another moment, then nodded. The red light blinked off. Croft exhaled. That was good, really good. Think it'll work? We'll find out. They left through the back exit. The drive back to the safe house took 40 minutes. Alara kept checking her phone, watching the responses pour in. It's everywhere, she said. Twitter, Facebook, already over 1 million views. And people are responding. Look at this. She turned the phone toward him. A tweet from someone calling themselves at Justice Seeker 47. I worked for one of the companies named in the Vale testimony. I have documents. How do I get them to the right people? Another. My father was a civil servant. He tried to report corruption and was forced out. I have his notes. Who do I contact? More and more. A flood of people finally finding the courage to speak. Adrian felt something loosen in his chest. It was working. It was actually working. Back at the safe house, they ordered takeout and watched the news coverage. Every channel was talking about Adrian's statement. Some praised it. Others called it reckless. A few accused him of trying to stay relevant, but the whistleblowers kept coming forward. By midnight, Croft texted, "We've received over 200 tips in the last 6 hours. This is unprecedented." Alara read the message aloud. 200 in 6 hours. Is that good? It's better than good. It's a tidal wave. Adrian allowed himself a small smile. Maybe they really could do this. Maybe the system could change. His phone rang. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Adrian? The voice was familiar. Victoria. Vic, where are you? Somewhere safe. I can't say more than that, but I needed to call to tell you something. What? I've been gathering evidence. Names, documents, things even you don't have. Her voice was tight. And I'm releasing them. Tonight. Adrian sat up straight. Vic, what are you talking about? I'm talking about finishing what you started. I've been working with Claire. We've got proof of things that go beyond Uncle Richard, MPs, judges, even people in the security services, all complicit, all protected. Victoria, if you do this, I know, I'll be a target too. But I can't sit by anymore. I can't pretend this doesn't exist. She paused. You were right, Adrian, about everything, and I was a coward for not seeing it sooner. You're not a coward. Maybe not anymore. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Victoria spoke again, her voice softer. I'm proud of you. I should have said that earlier, but I'm saying it now. Vic, take care of yourself, little brother. And take care of that journalist of yours. She's good for you. The line went dead. Adrian stared at his phone. Alara was watching him. What happened? She asked. Victoria. She's releasing more evidence. Tonight. Alara's eyes widened. How much more? Enough to blow the whole thing open. Adrian, if she does that, I know. They turned on the television. Waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Adrian was starting to think Victoria had changed her mind when the breaking news banner flashed across the screen. Breaking. New evidence in corruption scandal. Senior officials implicated. The anchor looked shaken as she read from the teleprompter. We're receiving reports of a massive document release allegedly showing involvement of multiple high-ranking officials in illegal activities. The source of these documents appears to be Lady Victoria Vale, sister of Duke Adrian Vale, who testified before Parliament 2 weeks ago. The screen cut to Claire's independent channel. She was live, her face serious. What we're releasing tonight, Claire said, is the result of months of investigation by Lady Victoria Vale. These documents show a pattern of corruption that extends far beyond what was previously known. We're talking about systematic abuse of power at the highest levels. Documents flashed across the screen. Names, dates, transactions, all damning. Adrian's phone exploded with messages. Croft, Simon, people he hadn't heard from in months. Everyone watching the same thing, realizing the same truth. It was over. Not the investigations, those would take years. But the cover-up, the ability to hide, that was done. Alara grabbed his hand. She did it. Yeah, she did. The news coverage continued for hours. By dawn, the Prime Minister had called for an emergency session of Parliament. 3 more officials had resigned. The palace issued a terse statement condemning corruption while carefully avoiding specifics. Adrian's phone rang again. This time it was Croft. You need to see this, she said without preamble. See what? Turn on BBC News now. He switched channels. The anchor was speaking, but it was the image behind her that made Adrian's breath catch. His uncle, the Duke of Marlborough, being led from his estate in handcuffs. We're getting reports, the anchor said, that Richard Vale, Duke of Marlborough, has been arrested on charges of money laundering, conspiracy, and violating international sanctions. This is the first major arrest in what authorities are calling the largest corruption investigation in British history. Adrian sat back, stunned. He'd hoped for this, dreamed of it, but seeing it actually happen felt surreal. Alara was beside him, her hand in his. You did this. We did this. No, you did. You started it. Everything else followed from that. He didn't know what to say, so he just squeezed her hand and kept watching, Over the next 3 days, the arrests continued. MPs, business leaders, even a sitting judge, the entire network that had operated in shadow for decades was being dragged into the light. Public opinion shifted. The initial skepticism gave way to outrage. Protests erupted across the country. People demanded accountability, reform, change. And slowly, impossibly, it seemed like they might actually get it. On the fourth day, Adrian received a call from an official he didn't recognize. The conversation was brief, formal. His Majesty would like to meet with you, in private, at your convenience. Adrian almost laughed. The king, wanting to meet with the duke who'd burned down the establishment. When? He asked. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Clarence House. I'll be there. He hung up and told Alara. That's either very good or very bad, she said. Probably both. The next afternoon, Adrian was driven to Clarence House under heavy security. He was searched 3 times, his phone confiscated. Then he was led through ornate corridors to a private sitting room. The king was waiting. He was older than Adrian remembered, grayer, more lined, but his eyes were sharp. Your Grace, the king said, gesturing to a chair. Please, sit. Adrian sat. The king poured tea from a silver pot, handed Adrian a cup. I suppose you're wondering why I asked you here, the king said. The thought crossed my mind. The king smiled faintly. I wanted to thank you. Adrian blinked. I'm sorry? You did something very difficult, something most people wouldn't have the courage to do. You exposed corruption within our own institutions. That takes integrity. With respect, sir, I destroyed my family's reputation. You exposed the truth. There's a difference. The king set down his cup. Your uncle and others like him were a cancer. They operated in our name, under our protection, and they did terrible things. You cut that cancer out. That's not destruction. That's surgery. Adrian didn't know how to respond to that. The king continued. I can't restore what you've lost. Your title, your standing, your place in the family, those are gone. But I can offer you something else. What? Purpose. The investigations will take years. The reforms even longer. We need people who understand what went wrong, people who can help us build something better. I'd like you to be part of that. Adrian stared at him. You want me to work for the crown? I want you to work for the country. There's a difference. And if I say no, then you say no. This isn't a command, it's an offer. Adrian thought about it, about everything he'd fought for, about the cost, about whether he could trust this institution that had enabled so much damage. I need to think about it, he said finally. Of course, take your time. The king stood. But Adrian, whatever you decide, know that you've already made a difference, a real one. That's more than most people can say. The meeting ended. Adrian was driven back to the safe house, his mind churning. When he walked in, Alara looked up from her laptop. How'd it go? Weird. He thanked me, offered me a job. Are you going to take it? I don't know. What do you think? She closed the laptop. I think you need to do whatever feels right, not what's expected, not what's easiest, what's right. That's annoyingly vague. I know, but it's the truth. Adrian sat beside her. If I do this, if I take the job, it means staying in London, being visible, being part of the system again. And if you don't, then we disappear. Start over somewhere else. Live quietly. Which do you want? He thought about that, about the quiet life, about walking away from everything a second time, and he realized something. He didn't want quiet, not anymore. I want to finish this, he said. I want to see it through. Make sure the reforms actually happen. Make sure this wasn't just theater. Alara smiled. Then that's what you'll do. And you? I'll keep doing what I do. Investigating, exposing, holding people accountable. Together? Together. 3 months later, Adrian stood in a government office overlooking Westminster. He'd been appointed as an independent advisor to the newly formed Anti-Corruption Commission. The title was a mouthful, but the work was real. He spent his days reviewing cases, meeting with investigators, pushing for transparency. It was exhausting, frustrating. Progress came in inches, not miles, but it was progress. Alara had started writing again, this time for Claire's outlet. Her pieces were getting attention, sparking conversations, keeping pressure on the people trying to backslide into old habits. They saw each other when they could. Coffee in the mornings, late dinners when both of them were too tired to cook. It wasn't the life Adrian had imagined for himself. It was better. One evening, 6 months after the arrest began, Adrian got a call from Victoria. She was in Switzerland, living under an assumed name, working with international investigators to track down offshore accounts. "How's exile treating you?" Adrian asked. "Better than I expected. Turns out I'm good at this." "Tracking dirty money?" "Exactly. Who knew?" She paused. "I saw your interview last week, the one about the reform bill." "And? And you were good, natural, like you were born to do this." "I wasn't. Maybe not. But you're doing it anyway. That counts for something." They talked for another 10 minutes about her work, his work, the slow grind of justice. When they hung up, Adrian felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope. A year after his testimony, Adrian stood on a cliff overlooking the sea. The same cliff where he'd first vanished. The same town where he'd met Alara. She was beside him now, her hand in his, both of them watching the waves crash against the rocks. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The old life?" "Sometimes. Mostly the parts that weren't real." "Like what?" "The certainty, the structure, knowing exactly who I was supposed to be." "And now?" "Now I have no idea who I'm supposed to be. But I know who I am." "Which is?" He thought about that. About the Duke who'd walked away. The whistleblower who'd testified. The advisor trying to fix a broken system. Someone trying to do better than the people who came before him. Alara leaned into him. "That's a pretty good answer." "Thanks. I've been practicing." They stood there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Behind them, the town was waking up to evening, lights flickering on, people heading home, life continuing in its messy, beautiful way. Adrian had lost everything: his title, his family, his place in the world. But standing here, watching the ocean with the woman who'd helped him find his courage, he realized something. He hadn't lost everything. He'd traded one life for another. And this one, uncertain, difficult, real, was worth infinitely more than the gilded cage he'd left behind. "What are you thinking about?" Alara asked. Adrian smiled. "How much further we still have to go." "Always the optimist." "Someone has to be," she laughed. He pulled her closer. And as the last light faded from the sky, they turned and walked back toward the town, toward whatever came next, together. The world hadn't changed overnight. Corruption still existed. Power still protected itself. The system still resisted reform. But it was changing. Slowly. One investigation at a time. One resignation at a time. One person finding the courage to speak up at a time. And that was enough. For now, it was enough.